welcome. If you don't know me, I'm Kayleen from the Urban Homestead Artist, and today I'm going to do something I've been promising for a long time, or hoping to do for a long time, and bring you into the kitchen to show you a little bit about what I actually do with the produce that comes out of the garden, which is quite a lot. So I have only recently, over the past few years, delved into a few extra preserving methods. I have done other, things like dehydrating and that over many years. But recently, over the past few years, I delved into pressure canning and fermenting, and I have found it incredibly valuable as even just running the home. So even if you don't grow a lot of vegetables yourself, those things are quite handy to have for health reasons and for convenience too. So I'm just going to show you quickly around my pantry, what I'm doing in the kitchen today, or have been doing this week, and just show you, it's a bit of a show and tell, not actually, we won't be making anything today, but I just want to show you what I've been making, what I'm about to make, and just how I manage all of this, and some of the things that I have in the cupboard that make life a lot easier and how I've preserved those. So let me take you through now what is in the kitchen right now. So on my kitchen bench is a lot of tomatoes. I'm kind of in the middle of the tomato season where things are I'm picking daily and bringing a few kilos each day of all sorts of tomatoes. So I've got some really pretty ones. I'll see if I can show you. Really pretty ones that with stripes and are almost like pearl, like they're a pearly stripe. They have this shine to them. And I have the big Malacca tomatoes, and this one here was a double blossom, and it grew to almost 1.4 kilos. So massive tomato. And some of its brothers and sisters here. And we've got lots of little Principe Borghese has been pumping since the start of the season, still going, which was unexpected. I thought they kind of, being a determinant, they would just give a whole lot of fruit and then exhaust themselves, but they are still going. And lots of other varieties. So it was only 6 days ago that I made tomato sauce out of several kilos of tomatoes, and in 6 days this is what's still on the bench after doing a few other things with them but not getting to these. So over here I have ferments going, and this is the second lot of ferments that I've been doing with the tomatoes. So there's a bit of garlic. I used dried garlic flakes in this second lot. The first lot was fresh garlic cloves, some basil, and the smaller varieties of the tomatoes. And they ferment and are ready around day 5 and taste like, would you believe, they taste like they're full of lemonade. They are fizzy and sweet, and they do take on the basil flavour really nicely, not too strong. There's just a big sprig in the middle of there. These ones are topped with a grapevine, because I do have a grapevine. They're grapevine leaves. The first lot I just weighted with glass, and one was a jar because I didn't have enough weights, and they sit there covered to keep the dust and the light out for about 5 days. I start testing them at day 3. In the fridge right now is the first lot, and I'm sorry about the light. This is the best I can do with this lighting. But what I do in the fridge, I always have a small bowl of very ripe tomatoes, and in here we've got the Tigerella with the stripes. That's the bigger one with the stripes. We've got the Tasmanian chocolate, which is my favourite flavoured tomato so far. They're a nice smoky flavour. They're really nice. And a few others. And I keep this topped up for us to eat fresh tomatoes each day out of there. That is the first lot of ferments. Some of them have a few beans in there. So we've been eating out of those. That's what's in the fridge now. They will continue to ferment very slowly and they'll keep in the fridge for months, but we'll probably use those within maybe a month or two, maybe 6 weeks. There is also in my fridge the grapes. I have eaten all the finger grapes fresh, but these are I think they're a strawberry grape, but they taste very almost musky, perfumed, like they're a wine grape. They're an unnamed grape that I was given and they are seeded. They have seeds, so not as convenient for making things out of, but my husband likes those, so he's got those to nibble on. Very good and healthy for them. I'm regularly making a slice out of mixed vegetables, lay it up like a lasagna, so a vegetarian slice, but this one had chicken in it, always topped with a little bit of cheese. And we have a moving containers in here of fresh produce, so I tried to use them up ASAP, if not that day, the next day, or process them within a couple of days at least and keep the fridge pretty clear. Down here I have assorted pickles that I have made out of reusing the pickle juice from pickle shop, bought pickled onions and gherkins and that, and I was saving the vinegar in here, and then I would cook it up and I turned it into pickled cabbage. This is red cabbage and some, that is Armenian cucumbers. Well, I think it is actually. I'm not sure if it's immature cantaloupe now, but anyhow, it's delicious, just like cucumbers, but firmer, and some cucumbers. So that's what I've done there. We always have Greek yogurt in the fridge that I turn into cheese sometimes, or use it for cooking, or I love to eat it with frozen fruit. There's a few things that I make up for breakfast. That's a cold pudding made out of oats and chia seeds, coconut, stewed apple, pure apple and Greek yogurt. That's breakfasts that I make up, and a few of the pickles that we have opened and eaten. In here is a baby tromponcino that I had to cut away from the wire, had grown in and out the wire, so I had to cut it off and bring it in, and that is bought capsicum, because we're still waiting for our capsicum and some rocket. So that's a babaco that I have used some of them in a fake pineapple preserve that's made out of zucchini, and that's pretty much. Oh, we've got some red green relish from previous years, and that's some of the new tomato sauce that I made on the 20th. It's the 26th today. Over on this side of the kitchen we have the steam canner, which I would highly recommend. They probably seem a little bit outpriced for what they are. This is pretty much, it's a pot with a pressure gauge on them. These you use instead of water bathing method, the water bath method. I very rarely water bath my preserves. I either pressure can or steam can, because I find this much more convenient, quicker, less water is used, so it saves on water. So basically it has this little insert here, and the water goes in here, and you fill it up to just underneath here, and you pop your jars on top here, pop the lid on, bring it up to the temperature, which is usually in the green there, and you let it steam off for a little bit, and then you steam can for the amount of time you would normally water bath. So I use this quite a bit for pickles and the things that don't need to be pressure cooked. So this is a batch that I just did yesterday that is waiting to be washed, because I always wash the jars after it's finished and label them. So this is the day before, because you leave it sit there always do it, let it sit overnight, and the next morning I wash them up. You're not meant to disturb the jars for a period of time, so that's what I do. This is the leftover brine that was made, or pickles that I was made, because I found the recipe I used really only uses half the quantity, so I had forgotten that and made a full quantity up for this, which it didn't use. This is a recipe I particularly like. It's a little bit adaptive, which I tend to adapt a bit, but it's a particularly nice recipe, particularly if you can't eat onion. But it's got a really nice, there's no lemon in it, but it has almost like a lemon flavour. But it's a really beautiful pickle, and it's made out of the white cucumbers that I had in the garden. So the white cucumbers in the garden were a little bit hit and miss compared to the burpless that I grew, which were always sweet. The white ones could be a little bit bitter at times, so they're a bit touch and go to use fresh, and rather than me testing all the time, I just turned all of them into pickles, and you cannot taste any bitterness in them if I get the occasional bitter one. So this recipe is really good because a lot of recipes, when you pickle pickles, calls for you salting the vegetable first, drain that off, and then you create the vinegar solution. Then you put the vegetable in that, you heat it for a period of time, then you ladle it back into here and go with the normal canning process. This you cold pack. Well, you sterilise the jars, then you pack the vegetables that have been mixed, drained, and mixed with the spices. So the spices have a chance to get all the way through every little bit of cucumber, rather than it's in the brine, you pour it in and hope that those little spices get in between all of the pickles. So this makes sure that the spices are well dispersed in between every single slice in there. I also found you can fit more in there. These are quite weighty jars with a lot of pickles in there. You can pack them tight and get quite a lot of pickles in a jar. So you save on vinegar, you save on jars, and so therefore you save on storage space. So you get more bang for your buck in each jar, and they're a bit of a space saver. You're getting no floating, no empty spaces where it's just brine, and because basically we want to eat the vegetables and not so much the brine. Now on the other side of the kitchen, I'm defrosting all of these, which were the banana passion fruit that I've got growing. So I had opened up the passion fruit as I got lots of them coming into the kitchen, and straight away would put how much I harvested into a container straight into the freezer and stored them. So this is we've got the 10th month here. So they're towards the end of last year. So they've been in the freezer for a few months waiting to be turned into something. Now, they're hard to use like this. They're very seedy, being passion fruit. So I'm going to turn them into a low sugar option. I haven't made a decision yet. I'll share it when I do. Might even share it on the channel so you can see how I process them. They will likely be, they might be pressure canned, depending on how much sugar I put in them and depending on the recipes. I have to check which one they need to be. But basically there's quite a few litres of this, and it was taking up a whole drawer in the freezer, and I'm getting to the stage where there's a lot of vegetables, foods have been, collecting in our freezer, and I needed the space. So that is the next thing to be processed. Now, I particularly wanted to show you how I do this because we have two things we have to consider when we process our foods and do preserves that are not typical. So when most people process their foods, they're pretty much laden with sugar, and onion is a main ingredient in pickles and things like that. In my house, my husband is allergic to onion. He can eat a little bit of garlic, so he can get away with that. But basically anything with onion, spring onion, particularly red onion, is just a no-go. So the preserves that I need to make have no onion in them when I preserve for him or us eating out of the same jar. So I do make some with onion, so that I particularly have them for myself because I love onion. But there's a lot of preserves that I make that I have to adapt because of the onion element. The other thing is I avoid sugar. So I try to have zero sugar or very little sugar. And a lot of jams and preserves are just more sugar than fruit or just as much sugar than fruit. So they're very, very highly sugared and therefore they're very inflammatory for a lot of people, and I'm one of those people. So it causes a weight issue for me and also it inflames my body. So sugar is, because it's part of a lot of the recipes, I have to adapt but still make something that's delicious. So a lot of the things that I preserve are no sugar, low sugar, or no onion. So that's still delicious. So that's one thing that's different, and I'll show you another thing in a minute. So this, we have two cupboards like this, and there's another cupboard for our preserves, and we rely on the fridge as well. But this is my husband's cupboard. So in other words, anything in here I can get into, but anything that goes in here is guaranteed to have no onion. Now we have some leftovers from stocking other things that we normally wouldn't eat in here when there was lockdowns and we needed to have some backup food. So there's a little bit of that being processed through now, but all of the tomato sauce and the pickles that I do in here, these kind of pickles, like your standard chutneys, some dill pickles, there's mixed vegetables here, mixed vegetables in there. All of these have got no onion. Some have garlic in them, which is optional, and no onion. There's not a lot of meals left in here, but there is, what have we got? We've got a meatball sauce in there. We had meatballs, but I think he's used them all. There's the relishes, there's hot chili relish, blueberry marmalade, mixed beans and spices, which is a mixed bean preserve. And these are all been done, this sort of thing's all done in the pressure canner. You can't do it in the water. Well, it's not recommended you do it in water bathing methods because it's apparently not safe. So, and there's meals. This is the other thing. This is one of the best advantages I have found of pressure canning, because you can preserve, you can cook and preserve, or cook and make meat shelf stable. You can also cook whole meals together. So this is a beef and vegetable meal, and that is the fat that's separated that can be used. So they can end up a very lean meal if you want to take the fat out, or you can cook the fat back in for flavour. So, but these are very flavoursome. There's no artificial anything in them. The vegetables can come straight out of your garden if you if you grow organically. You're guaranteed to not have any nasties in your food, and you can even have your grass-fed, your meat from happier animals. So I will show you my cupboard because there's not enough room in there, but what I've got in there too. So also, he likes to cook, my husband likes to cook a lot of mixes up, like a stir fries, curries and things for his work, and he batch freezes them. So he likes to have ingredients, so just plain ingredients that he can mix and match what he likes. So I've started to do some lentils. So this is just lentils, salt and water, as you would normally buy in a can. So that is pressure canned, and this is zucchini, just in water, so it's just plain zucchini. That's pressure canned. And we've got beans, which you cannot do any other way than pressure canning. They're particularly beans, of all things, can be sketchy to preserve and be safe for the cupboard. So they are pressure canned, and I'll take you over to my cupboard and show you what's in there and the benefits of some of the things in there. Okay, in my cupboard, there's a couple of things happening here. Now, the big thing in here is the chicken. So I have these rows and rows and rows of chicken breasts. So, and I'll give you a close-up. This is just chicken breasts, cold packed into jars and pressure canned. And you see all that liquid in there? There's a lot of liquid in there. It's not actually in liquid. It's just chicken in the jar, pressure canned, and that is all the juice that comes out of the chicken. Now the chicken, as you know, chicken breast can be less tender, even in cooking. So in canning, it'll be not as tender as the thighs, but this is still very tender, and I use this a lot in cooking. In fact, yesterday I made a beautiful slice. Well, the one you saw in the fridge was a layered up vegetable slice with coconut cream in it and chicken with cheese on top, and it was beautiful, really, really nice. But the texture, I'll just tell you a bit about the texture. So when you cook chicken like this, it has more of a tuna texture. So, you know, you open up a can of tuna, the texture that has. It has a texture similar to that, probably more tender. So tuna I find is quite dry, and I have to have it with mayo or something. It's not quite as dry as that, but it has a similar texture, just so you know what kind of texture it has. But that is shelf stable, and that can sit in your cupboard for a year or two. So I rotate them quicker than that, but I like to do it in under the year. But they are safe apparently for quite a while, and there's some that say even longer, but I'm not making any claims. I know that I use mine within a shorter time frame, and because I tend to be over safe rather than take any risks. So, but it is safe. So a lot of people are worried about meat done this way. It is very, very safe, because in a pressure canner, the food is brought up to such an intense heat that nothing can survive in there. Nothing, no nasties can survive in there. It's heat sealed, it's air locked, and as long as that seal remains sealed, it is safe to eat. You always check your jars when you open them. You'll hear this sound when you open them, and that is the suction. But the lids suck down and they're concave when they're sealed, and they'll pop back up if they lose their seal. But when you open them, you can feel the tension when you're trying to take the lid off, and you'll hear that sucking sound when you open it. But always do the sniff test. And believe me, if chicken or meat products, something like that, or even the beans or anything, had air got into them and they were off, you would know. When you open it up, you would smell it. So when you smell it and you can just smell chicken, whatever, you're safe. If you go, whoa, that's bad, you'll know it's bad. I haven't had a bad one yet, and I haven't had any release in the cupboard as yet, thankfully. But I do have had failed seals in the processing time that is coming out of the processor, the canner, and they're cooling down, and I've had failed seals then, and those foods go straight into the fridge, and we use them up as you would anything that's, opened or just been cooked recently. You use them up in that time frame. So if it happens there, that's easy to deal with too. But if it happens in the cupboard, you just turf it out. So in my cupboard, I have the chicken, and I also have, sometimes I put a jar of what's over in the other cupboards to remind me I've got it. And this, my cupboard, I've got the older jars. So I know to use this cupboard up first before I think about going to get the same or similar from another cupboard that we've got the most recent canning things. So these are older. So I've got zucchini. See, I've got black bean soup from 2023 here. That's 3 years old and it is still fine. I've been eating it. It's fine. You do you, I'll do me, right? But these are to be used up in the next few months. So I am wanting to particularly use that year up and 2024. So these are pickles. These are in vinegar. They're, you know, they're pretty good. And these are from last year. These are pickled. They're kind of hooked together because they've got little tails on them. These are radish pods, seed pods that I've pickled. So that's to save the seed pods out of the garden. I've got some stuff from swap meats, tomato soups in here, some of the relish that has the onions in here. I've got now this one was what I would call a failed attempt. So this is sweet cucumber pickle from a recipe I do not like. It's very vinegary. I have since gone with recipes that use more milder vinegars, and sometimes it's a combination of vinegar and water, so it's not so tart. These are very, very vinegary, and so they've kind of sat avoided, and now I've got them in this cupboard to remind me to just incorporate it into things, so you can kind of use them up by putting them a bit in other dishes and using them up where they're not going to overpower the dish. They will complement the dish and use up your food that you've spent all this time growing and preserving. Now also in this cupboard I keep a record. So this is my little book, and there's a couple of reasons why I do this. I don't track how much I've got very well, but every time I preserve, I write down what I do, and I write down what I do and how many jars, but particularly so that I can note, you see, I've written no onion or plus onion, or I've underlined spring onion. So I note if it's the jar has got onion or not for my husband's benefit. So if there's any jars of question in the fridge and he's not sure, I'm not sure if I'm cooking up for us, if it's got onion or not, I can just go to the jar and see the date, because I label every jar, and I can see, oh, this was made on the 2nd of the 2nd, 2015. I go back to a 15, that would be too old, 2025, and go back to the book, look up that date, and I can see what I pickled or what I pressure canned on that day, and I can see the actual jar, what it was, and if it has onion or not. So I could be writing it on the jar, but when you're doing 30 jars or whatever, it's just easier to keep it in the book. So I do that, and also, I don't know if you noticed in the fridge when we were in there, I have 3 shelves that are labelled no onion on the top, on the front of that. And so we know that that's a no onion free zone, and anything I put in the fridge in that area has no onions. So if your family's got any allergies or any even preferences, and they're not using the produce because they're not sure if that thing's in there that they don't like, if you have your no yucky zones in your fridge, you can label your shelves, and the kids or your husband or your wife knows that that shelf is free, and they can just eat to their heart's content. And yeah, so I think that's about it. Like I said, I've got some backup food here, meaty food here that's been used a little bit that we kept when we were worried about the shortages, which is still a concern now, but I'm trying to replace those sort of things with the homemade meals. And these are the meals that I'm talking about, homemade. These ones got onion in it, so they're ones that I can eat, that are meat and whatever vegetables come out of the garden at the time. I process it for the longest process time to make sure it's safe, and I have got a meal in the jar. And can I tell you the amount of times that I've been exhausted of a night time and not wanted to cook, and I've just been able to go and grab that, and it's great. My husband will grab a jar, adds right. We always have rice on the go, cooked in the fridge, and he just adds it to rice, and it's just amazing to have that. The other thing I've got in here that we absolutely love is the bolognese. So this is not just a bolognese sauce, it's full of meat. So the minced meat's in there. We've used up all the meatballs, but I do a meatball, spaghetti meatball sauce with the meatballs in them. And you just have to pour them out onto your pasta or your rice or your vegetables, which I do. So I don't eat flour, so I don't have the pasta, but I might pour that sort of thing out onto spaghetti squash, or just mix vegetables, steamed vegetables, and put that on, and it makes your vegetables more tasty. And my husband will have it on rice or pasta. So they are there's tomato soup in there, there's soups, stocks, anything down the bottom? No, that's dry stuff. So basically, that is what we have on the go. There's another cupboard where, like I said, I put the fresh pickles and things that I'm doing for that month, and all the the newer stuff, and I put that to the side there. We do eat out of that, but we're trying to actually use up some of this. So I probably would have less of the older produce in here, but it took a little while for my husband to adopt canning as a safe thing. So it took a little bit for him to adopt it and then to accept that meat was safe. But now he's tried some of those meals. He's like, these are really good. And I said, I know. They're just like a slow cooked meal. They're beautiful. The flavours go through and they're beautiful. Sometimes I make the meals and I put a bit of liquid smoke in it, and that's just like really nice. So there's so much that you can make and can and put in the cupboard. And the other benefit is the cooking time. So while you're over on the stove and cooking, now I often batch cook because I find it saves time. So I'll make enough for several nights, or I'll make enough for the freezer while I'm making something. I have extra so I can freeze a little bit, or it'll do the next night, so I'm saving my time. But with the pressure cooking in particular, because these canners will hold only so much. They'll hold about 6 or 8 things, and they, like I said, these are generally for the high acid foods, the fruits and things like that. So your jams, your preserves, your pickles that have got vinegar. But for the meals that I showed you, the meat meals and the vegetable meals, or the mixed vegetables, or meat meals with the mixed vegetables, or with if you use lentils or dried beans and vegetables and make actual meals in a jar, they're done with the pressure canner. And the pressure canner is a lot bigger than this. The pressure canner is taller and it will take a lot more jars. So out of the pressure canner, you can get 15 jars coming out of that in one batch. So you're making all of those meals up. They don't take you an enormous amount of time, particularly if you're cold packing stuff. So you're putting the meat. Cold packing means put it into the jars cold. You throw it all in. You might put boiling water in some of them, or like I showed you with the chicken, you don't put anything in it. You seal it, pop it in there, and you bring it up to the temperature. So it's not a big cook up before you even start. The spaghetti bolognese, I do cook a little bit first because you want to get that meat moving through the sauce without being lumpy. So I'll cook that first before I actually pressure can it. So there is that cooking time. But basically you got 15 jars coming out of the canner. That's 15 meals. Like that's, if you had one of those jars each, that's 7 meal times done in one session. So you save yourself on gas, you save yourself on time, and you're not filling the fridge, you're not having your produce being eaten after it's deteriorated too much, because you're preserving things straight away. It's fresh as it can be. If it's from your garden, it's super fresh, and you're preserving all of that goodness in the jars for your family to eat, but it's able to sit in a cupboard and not fill up your freezer and fridge. So that is the reason I love canning so much. That is what I've discovered with it. I would highly recommend people to look into and try out pressure canning. Invest in the steam canner. If you've got just a big pot at home, you can water bath things and not invest into anything. But this is really worth the investment. I think it was, I don't know, I paid about $150 or something Australian for that. I can't remember how much they are, but I think they're under $200 for it. But if you can ask Santa for one of them or invest in one of them, I would highly, highly recommend it. The pressure canner is a good pressure canner, which is the Presto I've got. I've got the Presto that will go on a electric or gas, so the convection option, and they're about $320, $350. They're expensive to buy, but I look at the time I've saved, the produce I'm saved, all of that food that we're growing and preserving without all the bad stuff in our food is, to me, a health insurance. I think that's pretty cheap health insurance. So it's much better for us to be eating this way. So that is just a very brief and pretty fast intro to what I've been doing over the past few years with all the canning. You'll see my social feeds. I'm sharing, I've done this, I've done that today. Sometimes I share that, but I haven't really shared much of how I've done it, and I've hoped to do that. But I just want to at least show you the whys, what's in that cupboard roughly, and just a real life look-see at my messy kitchen at the moment and where we're at. So this is just a real peek in here on a normal day. So yeah, thanks for joining me. And if you're new to my channel, check out the other videos to see how I'm growing in my normal backyard. And we are towards the end of February 2026 when I'm recording this. And can I tell you, this is my third year of growing food on a standard backyard, and I am just floored at how much you can grow in a yard. Like, I cannot believe the amount of produce that's coming out of our yard. I've started weighing and counting, and I do miss some things, and I don't count my eggs. But basically in January, I pulled out 43 kilos of food out of the garden in January, and this month we've not even finished. I've pulled out over 80 kilos of vegetables, fruit and vegetables out of my garden, and I'm thinking I could even reach the 100 kilos by the end of this month. And it's not just how much food, it's nutrient dense, mineral filled food, because I have a monocropped. They're so healthy. The plants are so healthy. The food I'm bringing in is so healthy. It's like multivitamins in your fruit and vegetables. And there's fruit and vegetables I normally wouldn't go out and buy because either they're too expensive, or I just wouldn't even think to buy them because I'm not used to cooking with them, or they're not even available because you can't get them because they won't ship. They have to be used up pretty quickly. So I have so many different varieties of fruit and veggies that come into our kitchen that we normally wouldn't have access to or could afford, and is all organic and is so full of vitamins and minerals that we wouldn't normally be absorbing into our bodies that we do now. So get some seeds in the ground today, people. Just build on that, my friends, and you'll be amazed at how much is grown. If you go back to the earliest videos that I made, my yard was a weed infested nothing land. It was just an absolute chaos mess. It's taken some work to slowly build up and get where I'm going. But oh my goodness, you wait until you see what is coming out of these. You should see my Trompentino. I estimate I'll probably get about 40-50 kilos of Trompentino just off one plant out there. The fruit is like up to here on me. It's this massive fruit on it, and there's about 15, I think, large tropicinos on my one vine out there at the moment. I've never seen anything like it. And like I showed you before, the tomatoes, huge tomatoes. It's just so much fun, and it's so good for you, and it's good for you to be out there, outside, vitamin D, in the garden, touch the earth, getting away from devices, and where we're meant to be out in nature. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.